Probably best known for its production of textiles during the 16th century, including wool and cloth, Devizes also boasted the largest corn market in the west of England during the 18th century. From the end of this period, however, the manufacture of textiles declined. Nonetheless, the world-famous Wadworth Brewery still remains in the town, having been founded here in 1875. Bikes and Boards Cycle Shop, which is open until 5 p.m, is also situated within the town, should a visit be required to help resolve any mechanical issues. As we leave Devizes via the bridge by the Black Horse Inn and continue heading west along the A361, you may catch sight of the network of gates that make up the Con Hill Locks at mile 151. This series of 29 flights of locks lie along a 2-mile section of the Kennet and Avon Canal between Rode and Devizes, and were the brainchild of engineer John Rennie, with each section rising 237 feet in as little as 2 miles to overcome the tricky incline. Owing to the steepness of the terrain, the sections between each lock where vessels lie, as they make their way along the canal, are very short. As a result, 15 of these locks require pounds, which extended sideways in which to store the water needed to operate them. With the rising popularity of the railway network at the beginning of the 20th century, as a more convenient means of transportation, the canal fell into disuse, with the last cargo arriving through the flights in October 1948. However, the mid-1960s witnessed a major rebuilding campaign, culminating in a visit by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in 1990 to officially reopen the locks and breathe new life into this historical landmark. With the prospect of the Mendip Hills to come, there's no hiding the fact that the profile here on in becomes increasingly challenging for many, particularly towards the latter stages of this final chapter of the ride. So it's perhaps a little comforting to learn that there is a comparatively flat 6-mile section up to Keyville to greet us first. This in spite of the potential southwesterly headwinds confronting us for much of this segment. Onwards now to the more remote parts of southwest Wiltshire, as we approach Paulshot at mile 152, continuing along this flat stretch to Keyville as the Wiltshire lowlands continue to offer little in the way of discomfort in the profile, not before hitting the village of Bulkington, sandwiched in between the two, and the very accommodating Well Inn public house situated at its heart. The quiet transitional sections from Bulkington, the busy stretch of the A350 just south of Trowbridge greets us just after mile 158. This 2-mile run down to Yarnbrook at mile 161 is a popular transport route for articulated vehicles, so it's advisable to approach this single file. Thankfully, the experience is reasonably short-lived, and the right-hand turn onto the Westbury Road at the roundabout by the Longs Arms public house leaves much of the heavier traffic behind. You probably won't notice the change immediately, but mile 164, just after the village of Southwick, could be considered at the start of the Mendip Hills, as the rolling Wiltshire scenery is replaced by the more rugged Somerset landscape along the A361, where it intersects with the aptly named village of Road at mile 165. Preceded by a third of a mile 5% average ramp up of the B3109 into the village before the route stumbles upon another watering hole at the charming and characterful Red Lion pub just up from Road Hill in Wolverton at mile 166. Road conditions take a considerable turn for the worst over the next few miles, particularly as the route guides us on a journey along the gravel-lined tracks between miles 167 and 171, so expect to encounter some breaking up of the often neglected road surface here, and take extra care on the short, winding descents pepper-potted along Hammer Lane and Chickwell Lane in amongst the brief, punchy inclines. After an undulating section across from Wolverton, mile 171 arrives, and with it the village of Hemmington. This peaceful hamlet, set in the heart of the North Somerset countryside, lies approximately 15 miles east of Cheddar Gorge, but don't let the tranquil surroundings fool you, since this place will always be remembered on the ride for just one thing: Southfield Hill. Shrouded on both sides of its sharp incline by a series of high hedges, via a narrow lane, this lung-busting brute of an ascent will have participants searching for extra gears as the ride reaches 500 feet above sea level and a crest in the Somerset Hills. After passing the Blessed Virgin Mary Church, on the left-hand side, there's approximately 900 feet to go before a sharp, right-hand bend rapidly transforms the rural, tree-lined passage into a frenetic search for any remaining strength left in the tank, and the climb registers a near 1 in 4 profile. The ascent lasts for approximately 500 feet before it gradually eases, bringing with it a sigh of relief and the satisfaction that the steepest climb on the route has been ticked off. After the efforts of Southfield Hill, riders are rewarded with a pacey 6% descent of the B3139 as the ride takes us into Kilmersdon at mile 175. The roots of the classic fable Jack and Jill can be traced back to this pretty little Somerset village, where, towards the end of the 17th century, it is said that the young love-smitten couple climbed the hill at the end of Ames Lane, overlooking the village every day to fetch water from the nearby well. Whereupon Jack was fatally wounded by a stray rock from Badstone Quarry and stumbled down the hill. Legend has it that at the time Jill was expecting a child, but sadly died shortly after giving birth. A plaque on the wall of the local primary school bears the inscription of the famous nursery rhyme, and serves as a constant reminder of the area's strong links with the story. Just as Kilmersdon slips to the back of our minds, the Mendip Hills never cease to remind us of the tests that still lie ahead, as the village leaves us with another memento of its undulating profile: Kilmersdon Hill. This 8.5% average incline may feel somewhat harder than the profile suggests, as tired legs carrying the weight of 175 miles within them scream upon every turn of the pedals, with the only crumb of comfort coming from the fact that the summit of the climb is in sight as soon as the ascent begins. A quick stop at the cooperative supermarket in Chilcompton at mile 178 is surely one for the agenda, since it's the final location to stock up on any meaningful provisions to fuel you on the remaining 28 miles to Burnham-on-Sea. A run through the village of Emborough at mile 180 awaits before the hop across to mile 181 presents a little light relief for the weary rider. Averaging 2% along this 1.6 mile descent to the Bathway crossroads. Conversely, this 3-mile section through miles 182 to 185 along the B3135 brings with it a considerable drag as we crest another high point in the Mendip Hills. The road begins to dip a little at mile 189, and we begin to see rock formations set into the sides of Cliff Road. These compositions gradually increase in size as the route continues, and it soon becomes apparent what lies ahead. Cheddar Gorge, set deep in the Mendip Hills, near the village of Cheddar, is a natural phenomenon, created over the course of 1.2 million years, thanks to a series of periglacial periods. There's no denying the breathtaking qualities of this exhilarating descent, as riders navigate its 19 turns, culminating in the arrival into Cheddar Village, some 732 feet lower down. Britain's oldest complete human skeleton, affectionately known as Cheddar Man, and estimated to be over 9,000 years old, was discovered in one of the many cave systems here in 1903. Attracting some 500,000 visitors a year, the caves, produced by the activity of an underground river, are part of a wider site of special scientific interest, referred to as Cheddar Complex. Whilst ownership of the site is split, the northern side of the gorge being owned by the National Trust, whilst the southern side is retained by the Marquess of Bath's Longleat estate. Whilst the descent of Cheddar Gorge should be an enjoyable experience, it's important not to lose any concentration on the descent, taking particular care towards its lower reaches, as one or two of the slopes reach 16% and the switchbacks become increasingly narrower between the cliff faces. At the root of the descent, and if there's time, Ice Dreams tempts riders with ice creams and donuts from their menu, and a much-needed energy boost for the final 15 miles of the ride. As a special treat for Chase the Sun participants, the shop regularly opens until late as an added incentive for the weary traveller. Out of Cheddar Village now and onto the B3151. The elevation brings us right down to a little more than 10 feet above sea level, acting almost as a catalyst for this 1,500-foot-long, 10% average kick-up of Longkill through Clewer Village at mile 194, as we exit right off the Cheddar Road. Through the undisturbed villages of Staunton Cross at mile 195 and West Staunton at mile 196 now, the very models of remote suburban living. We are now 10 miles from the finish, and any insignificant lumps in the profile here will undoubtedly weigh down on the heavy legs of the 196 miles within them as the Staunton Road gives way to Blackford, one of our final brushes with pastoral England at mile 197. Passing across the Somerset lowlands via the B3139, and with the climbing finally behind us. Our only remaining encounter with parish life occurs at the village of Mark at mile 200, which lays claim to being the longest village in England at just under 2 miles in length. Out of the village of Mark, where we are now less than 5 miles until we reach the busy seaside town. Off the B3139 now, and right onto Pilmore Lane heading northwest, cutting almost a straight line towards Burnham-on-Sea. Across the bridge over the M5 motorway, then it's a right-hand turn onto the A38, and then left at the roundabout onto the B3140, at mile 203 and the intersection with Edithmead, an enclave of the coastal town. Straight over the roundabout by the Tesco superstore, left onto Oxford Street, then right onto College Street, before finally taking a left-hand turn onto the Esplanade at the end. Mile 206, and the end of the jetty along the Esplanade opposite the Reed Arms Public House, provides the setting for the conclusion to this momentous ride. We've seen us generate over 64,000 pedal turns, burned over 6,000 calories, climbed over 9,000 feet, and cycled 206 miles across 5 counties of England to reach our goal. And what a journey it has been.